He came home from work early, then noticed Bruises, his daughter, tried to hide, even though it was several hours earlier than normal. David's shirt was still clinging to the stale air of the office as he struggled with his keys. A meeting that was cancelled. It was a rare gift of time. In his mind, he envisioned Mia being taken aback by an unexpected ice cream run just before she had her piano lesson. There was a spooky level of silence in the home. There is no music coming from her room, and there is no rhythmic thumping coming from her. She is practicing jump rope in the den. Is it a sweet pea? His bag fell to the ground as he cried out, "Home early." The response was silence. A tingling sensation of uneasiness ran over his spine. He discovered her in the sunroom, where she was bathed in the long light of the late afternoon. The pose she was sitting in, which was slumped over her sketchbook, exuded a tension that was very foreign to his daughter, who was often lively and active. "Hey, Mealbug," he said, as he navigated his way across the room. The sketchbook was slammed shut with a loud thud as she jerked back and forth awkwardly. As if she were a scared deer caught in headlights, her eyes widened and her head snapped around. "Dad, are you? You're going to get home early." It was too high and too thin for her voice. In a second, she attempted to grin, but it broke apart completely. Certainly, the meeting was cancelled. I had the impression that we could have a cone before. His statements became less coherent. After being lured to her forearm by the abrupt movement of her arm tugging her sleeve down, his sight remained fixed on her at that moment. In spite of the scorching heat of July, she had markings that were visible just above her wrist and peeked out from behind. The sleeve of her sweatshirt that was pulled down. Purple and yellow-green swirls that overlay one another in a furious manner. Bruises appear. Bruises that are deep and finger-shaped. Time has been sped up. Everything that had been there before, including the cheery sunroom, the aroma of potted geraniums, and the distant drone of a lawnmower, vanished into a buzzing emptiness. The only thing that was visible were those crimson scars on his daughter's very fair skin. His voice had a hoarse rasp to it, and it was devoid of any emotion other than fear. What happened? Her face became creased. Not so much. My fall occurred. I'm off my bike, beside the park. It was yesterday, rehearsed and brittle. The words came out in a stuttering stream. It's nothing, really. The wooden floor caused David's knees to groan as he squatted down carefully across it, fearing that his own shaking may cause her delicate serenity to be shattered. He refrained from touching her. He said, "Sweetheart," as his throat became constricted. Those are not the result of a bike riding accident. At first glance, it seems as if someone has grabbed you, intensely so. There was a sudden outpouring of tears. Her head was severely shaken, and she buried her face in her hands as she did so. "I beg you, Dad, not at all. Don't force me to declare it." Her hushed pleading was like a dagger being thrust into his stomach. In his imagination, a frenetic slideshow of faces flashed before his eyes. The lads in her class who were a little bit too rough. Who is the irritable neighbor who shouted about balls being hidden in his yard? Then, in a disturbing turn of events, it fell on someone else. There was someone who trusted Evans, the coach. This is Mark Evans. For the last 2 years, Mia's cherished gymnastics coach has supported her. She had gone from being a clumsy child to a state-level contender, thanks to the guy who had altered her. He was the guy whose favor David himself had often celebrated, and whose admiration Mia longed for tremendously. In the past, David had faintly detected Mark's motivational techniques as strong, but he dismissed them as determination. Mark, who often remained a little too long after practice, was one of those individuals. "Look at me, Mia. Apply more force. Is that the only thing you have?" The voice of Mark, which was often filled with resounding support, suddenly reverberated in David's recollection with a sly undertone. It was then that he remembered how Mark would sometimes adjust Mia's posture by leaving his hands on her shoulders or hips for a lengthy moment. David had disregarded it as a required repair of the situation. Today, the recollection made me feel sick to my stomach. "Mia, was it Coach Evans?" David inquired, using a voice that was barely audible. Mia became completely numb. The period of stillness was drawn out, oppressive and stifling. And then, a slender, shattered nod. She mumbled, He gets mad," as the words started to come out of her mouth. "If I am unable to execute a move correctly, or when I'm feeling exhausted. According to him, he's only trying to make me more resilient. That true champions need consistent self-control." By pulling her arm down even more, she attempted to conceal the bruises, as if they were a horrible secret. It was his assertion that if I informed anybody, he would accuse me of lying, that I was just being weak. He would take measures to ensure that I never competed again. In addition to that, he would tell everyone that I had resigned because I was unable to deal with it. Her eyes glowed with an unfathomable anxiety, one that was rooted in a primitive fear of unbelief and solitude. David felt a raging rage that was so great that it threatened to destroy his rationality. It was a frigid, volcanic wrath. Images raced before my eyes. Evans, with his fists flying, and the gratifying crunch of bone between his teeth. But when he saw Mia's face, which was covered in tears and exhibited a genuine vulnerability, he tightened his grip. Take care of her, without fail, first. Take care of her. Taking a deep breath that caused him to tremble, he attempted to force his voice into a serenity that he did not feel. I am Mia. Listen to what I have to say. You are not a feeble person. This is a mistake on his part. totally in error. On top of that, it is never your fault. Does it make sense to you? Without a doubt. While he was holding her stare, he was speaking with every ounce of conviction he could muster. We are going to make this right, all at once. I assure you that he will never touch you again in the future. You are not going to be defeated in gymnastics. However, before anything else, we need to be intelligent. He took her by the hand and led her to the kitchen, where he sat her down and carefully poured her a drink of water. Now that he had his hands firm, he was concentrating. It was not yet time for him to ring 911 when he grabbed his phone. Using his notes app, he opened it. All right, my darling. You are going to have to tell me all that you can remember, no matter what he asserted. Just what he did. Where and when are you? Are there any witnesses, even if they did not observe the actual snatching that took place? He spoke in a quiet, factual tone, as if he were a detective collecting evidence rather than a parent whose life was falling apart with his words. The horrible image gradually pieced together, one delicate piece at a time. The injuries were not the only result. His voice dropped to a menacing whisper as he cornered her alone in the equipment room after practice. It was the harsher shoves that were used during corrections, the pinches that were disguised as incentive, and the increasing intensity of the discipline that was the cause of this. The manipulation was subtle and included separating her from her friends, eroding her confidence, and using her passion as a weapon against her. You want to quit? Will you be a failure? David photographed everything, his stomach twisting as he did so. He shot pictures of Mia's injuries with great care and attention to detail, making sure that the size and color were both visible. He took note of the date that she remembered. Following that, he made the call. Not to the standard police line, but rather to a detective whom he had just a passing familiarity with via a community outreach program. He explained the delicate nature of the situation, which included a well-known youth coach. If it was at all feasible, he asked for a female officer. Finally, the reveal. A calm and professional manner was shown by Detective Alvarez upon his arrival, which immediately placed Mia in a little more relaxed state. While David paced the kitchen, feeling completely helpless and irritated, she conducted an interview with Mia in the living room. The interview was delicate but comprehensive. He heard Mia's voice, which was soft but becoming stronger as she related her story to someone who listened without passing judgment on what she had been through. Detective Alvarez maneuvered quickly, armed with the photographs and the careful notes that David had maintained. She began an investigation by contacting Child Protective Services and requesting their assistance. David was aware that they need more than Mia's word in order to compete against a dynamic and well-respected coach. The credibility of Mia would be attacked, denied, and deflected by Evans. After that, David recalled Mia's sketchbook, which was the one that she had abruptly closed with a snap. He opened it with her consent, which seemed to be shaking. In place of the fanciful animals or landscapes that she often depicts, the pages were filled with images that were unfiltered and unsettling. Small figures are engulfed by dark forms that swirl around them. Hands that are big and resemble claws, clutching at forms that are delicate. There was an image of Coach Evans on one page that was so eerily precise that it was virtually a caricature. His features were contorted into a threatening grimace, and his eyes were black holes. The words he says, "It's love," were written in a furious, small script in the corner of the room. It may be described as drowning. At the same time, it was a visual journal of abuse, which was proof of significant psychological pain. The snare and the embarrassment. Alvarez, the detective, came up with a scheme. Because Child Protective Services was engaged and Mia had been legally taken from Evans' gym, awaiting the inquiry, they need either actual evidence or the testimony of additional victims. David used his position as a worried dad to seek a meeting with Evans under the premise of addressing Mia's sudden decision to resign and her emotional state. Evans agreed to meet with David without any more explanation in the antiseptic, trophy-lined office of the gym. David sat opposite Evans while wearing a wire. Evans was sitting next to him. The guy had an air of slick charm and a well-grounded care. "Dear David, I am utterly devastated by the way Mia is feeling. She have a ton of promise. Despite the fact that it may come out as harsh, I am aware that this commitment is a result of her passion for the sport and for her future." Evans moved closer to the speaker, his voice lowering in a secretive manner. "Young ladies, David, they have a tendency to be theatrical. It is hormonal. Everything is misunderstood by them. The use of a hard hand is occasionally required, but it is always done for the benefit of the individual. It is likely that she misunderstood part of the criticism, became humiliated, and then fabricated a tale." David resisted the impulse to surge forward. Instead, he turned his rage into a chilly precision that was unreadable. "Is that correct? You mean the bruises that are on her forearm?" "Bruises in the form of fingers, Mark." The outside of Evans's face glowed. Before the mask was forced back down, there was a brief moment of terror in his eyes. It was just for a microsecond, however. Stiffness from falling, without a doubt. It's a hard sport to play. It's likely that she fell. David worked hard. She informed me about the room full of equipment. When you were motivating her by yourself, she grabbed you and grabbed her. In regard to the dangers, it doesn't seem like a fall to me at all. Evans's expression became more resolute. The allure vanished, and in its stead was a chilly and calculated threat that David had never before encountered. His tone became harsh and menacing, and it had lost its smoothness all along. "Please, pay close attention, David. Your daughter has a vulnerable nature. Destabilized. Be prone to fantasizing. As long as you continue to spread these falsehoods and slander, it will bring her down. The power lies with me, its reputation. To whom do you expect people will put their faith? Who is more likely to be the coach who creates champions or the frantic teenager? Exit the room. For the sake of Mia, when it comes to this sport, I will make sure that her name is mud. They will know that she is a liar and a quitter if she continues to compete in every gym and competition." When a predator showed its fangs, the danger was very real and could be felt. Every detail was documented. The admission that they were aware of the injuries, the veiled admission that they were isolated, the explicit threats of revenge and reputation assassination. These are all examples of the standard Darvo tactic that abusers use. The consequences of the recording was quite shocking. When Mia's testimony, her sketchbook, and the original evidence were taken into consideration, it was substantial enough to warrant an arrest. Acting swiftly, Detective Alvarez carried out the search order that had been issued for Evans' home computer and gym office environment. What they discovered was even more disturbing than they had anticipated. Hidden files titled training logs that contained meticulous and obsessive notes on a large number of young gymnasts. These notes included information about the gymnasts' perceived weaknesses, their emotional vulnerabilities, the specifics of disciplinary measures that were implemented, and particularly chilling notes on which gymnasts were compliant or problematic. There was a lot of information in Mia's file, including her growing anxiety and his more aggressive tactics. There were at least 3 more females who had suddenly resigned their jobs during the last year under strange circumstances, according to the evidence present. Shockwaves were sent across the town as the news of Coach Evans' arrest was announced. Upon closer inspection, the cherished guide was shown to be a cunning predator. In a cautious and gradual manner, other families came forward. No one was at Mia's side. Evans' carefully created veneer was destroyed and shattered as a result of her courage, which was reinforced by her father's steadfast belief and thorough efforts. A lengthy legal procedure would be required. Evans fought back with ferocity, and his defense team attacked Mia's integrity. However, the physical evidence, the tape, the files, and the bravery of other victims who emerged from the shadows made a compelling case. David made sure that Mia was seeing the most qualified trauma therapist who specializes in the treatment of teenage abuse and athlete coercion. Mia was not ascending the journey to recovery alone. Despite the fact that it was a steep route that was lined with nightmares and therapy sessions, On that particular day, David does not get his ice cream run. In its place, he was confronted with a horrible reality and the battle of his life. After a few months had passed, he saw Mia as she tentatively attempted to do a basic cartwheel on the grass of a newly established gymnastics club. She was being supervised by a coach who was both friendly and straightforward. Despite the fact that the shadows had not fully disappeared from her eyes, they were gradually disappearing and being replaced with a glimmer of the old spark. Despite the fact that the bruises had disappeared from her flesh, the memory of the incident remained permanent for both of them. When David arrived home that evening, he stood at the back door and looked out at the yard. Not only did he see the grass and trees, but he also saw the invisible battlefield that they had traversed. It was in his mind that the offender was incarcerated. The town was in a state of disarray, and his daughter was gradually regaining her strength. His mind wandered to the notebook, which was now stuffed with drawings of birds in flight that were optimistic and timid. A scar has been left across their life as a result of the enormous expenditure. However, when David saw Mia quietly chuckle at something on her phone, a sound that was genuine and unburdened, he realized that the conflict had been worth it. Despite the fact that the crushing anxiety had subsided, the vigilance continued to exist, serving as a permanent layer underlying his affection. Once again, they were able to breathe. It was safe for them. As he turned down the light on the porch, he reflected on the fact that this was the only prize that really mattered.